Hi everyone. So I went to my hometown just to shoot this camera comparison between Samsung Galaxy M31 versus Motorola One Fusion Plus. I drove almost 100 kilometers just to shoot this video, so at least I deserve a thumbs up. Camera specs on both of the phones are quite similar. They both support the 64 megapixel Samsung GW1 sensor. They have 8 megapixel ultra wide sensor, 5 megapixel macro camera. But Motorola One Fusion Plus has 2 megapixel depth camera as compared to Samsung, which has 5 megapixel depth camera. On front, Samsung has 32 megapixel front camera and can record up to 4K 30 frames per second, and which is very rare even in the flagship department as well. On Motorola One Fusion Plus, you get a 16 megapixel front pop-up camera. So let's start with the front camera video. Hi everyone. So I'm recording this video with Galaxy M31 and Motorola One Fusion Plus. So this is the front facing camera. Galaxy M31 supports 4K 30 frames per second from front camera, but Motorola One Fusion Plus only supports Full HD 30 frames per second. So sound is coming from both of the cameras. So this is the front camera video in night. I am at my hometown. Just came here to just shoot this M31 because my brother is using M31. So this is how it looks at night. I just have only one light on the top. So as you can see, M31 is a little sharp, but it's overexposed as well, and the color of my mask and t-shirt is not right. But it's managing the color in background much better. Look at the tree for example. On the other hand, Motorola is doing a good job in dynamic range, but the colors in background are a bit saturated. But when it comes to night video, Samsung is doing a much better job with noise and colors. So the color of my skin and t-shirt looks almost perfect. So the front camera video, I'll give this one to Samsung because it has more details and a better low light performance. Now let's watch the video taken from the rear camera. So this is the recording from back camera. Both supports 4K 30 frames per second. And let me just walk so that you can see the stabilization. So both of the devices are handheld, and you can see how they're handling the dynamic range. So this is from rear camera in just this one light, and this is my house. It's a very old house, so I don't have much to show here, but at least you will be able to see the difference at white balance. And M31 camera looks a little wider and has much less noise as compared to, but we'll see. So as you can see, Motorola colors are more saturated as compared to Samsung M31, and both are terrible at stabilization, and Motorola is trying to zoom in a little bit. Motorola is handling the dynamic range better, but in foreground it's underexposed. I like the Samsung video here, so the colors are on point and the dynamic range in the foreground and background is great as well. When it comes to video at night, Motorola struggles with the white balance a lot, but has much better stabilization than Samsung M31. In slow motion video, Motorola is doing a much better job with exposure, but there's a focus problem. It's trying to hunt down the focus quite often. Now let's start with photos. In this first shot, I am testing the dynamic range first as the sun was setting. And the first thing I noticed that Samsung is doing a great job with image processing despite having the same sensor. Colors looks better and dynamic range looks good as well. This was my first click and I tried multiple times, but the result was same every time on Motorola Fusion. When it comes to ultra wide, Samsung is doing an amazing job with dynamic range here as well. It's a little more saturated as compared to the main sensor, but it has much better details compared to Motorola. Now look at the next picture. There is a clear difference in colors, and Samsung pictures look quite saturated while Motorola's picture looks natural. In my opinion, Samsung pictures look more pleasing to the eyes. Talking about details, both cameras try to sharpen the image, but I think Motorola fares a little better at this. I've said this in my review of Motorola One Fusion Plus, and I'll say it again. I'm really disappointed with the ultra wide camera on Motorola. Colors are muted and there are no details whatsoever. I mean, just look at the zoom picture. Although this is the first and last time I'm going to use a macro camera on both of these phones, unless I'm going to compare them again. Both phones are handling macro very differently. I tried multiple times but couldn't get closer to the flower on Motorola. Also, Samsung has a very nice depth of field, but when you zoom in, you can see Samsung lack details. In this next picture, Samsung oversaturates the image, but that's not always a bad thing. Look at this picture side by side and you can see Samsung is just social media ready. But when it comes to details, Motorola is doing a little better, but the image is underexposed in the shadows. And I'm gonna go with Samsung here as well. I know at this point you must be wondering why I'm favoring Samsung at every turn. Well, that's about to change with the next picture. I don't like the oversaturated greens on Samsung here. The colors on Motorola image are very nice and natural. But when zoomed in, I think Samsung has managed to keep more details in the trees this time. And same is the case with the next picture. Samsung is oversaturating the colors and they don't look real. However, turning the scene optimizer off yields better colors on Samsung. If I have to pick one in terms of exposure and saturation, I would still pick Samsung over Motorola, as the picture taken using Motorola is mostly underexposed and you have to put more effort into editing the picture afterwards. At this point, I really don't feel like talking about ultra wide, even though Samsung is oversaturating colors, but it has more details. And I feel they are at least usable as compared to Motorola's wide angle camera. In this next picture, I just want to show you the difference between the main camera and the wide angle camera. Samsung's ultra wide gives more saturated images than the main sensor, but when compared to Motorola's camera, Samsung has better details and dynamic range, while Motorola ultra wide is kind of dull. I'm not saying Samsung is doing a good job with ultra wide, but it's definitely better than Motorola. In pitch dark conditions, both are terrible, but Motorola can light up the scene better. They are not great cameras in night, and if you want to see more details about both of their night capabilities, I have compared them with different smartphones. You can check them in the cards and the description. Now it's time for front camera pictures. In the first picture, both are doing the opposite job. Samsung is saturating the subject more while Motorola is saturating the background. I like the colors better on Samsung M31. It was very hot and we have to do what we have to do, right? In the next picture, I was testing dynamic range as the sun was setting behind me, and Samsung is doing a better job here as well. The sky is better exposed and even I look better in the picture taken using M31. At night, Motorola still saturates the background more. Also, my skin tone is not quite right. Samsung is doing a decent job here. Even in portraits, color are better on M31. My skin looks better, although edge detection is bad on both of them. In very dark environments, it's a tough call. Skin colors looks better on M31 but has more noise. In Motorola, the exposure is tad bit better, but because of the noise reduction, it is more smooth. But I'll go with Motorola here. I also clicked some rear portraits and surprisingly, both of them are doing a good job and looks quite similar to me. Motorola is zooming in a little bit, or maybe my hand was closer. In daytime, portraits look better on both of the phone here as well, but my jeans color is much better on Motorola. When I zoom in, edge detection is great on both, so the difference between 2 megapixel depth camera and 5 megapixel depth camera is not much, but the color wise, Motorola is better. When it's come to dynamic range, Samsung is doing a great job, but the photo is more on the cooler side. So there you go guys, let me know about your thoughts about this camera comparison, and if you enjoyed the video, please hit the subscribe button. My name is Rohit, I'll see you in the next one. Till then,